I think we are live, but yet again, I am not sure. So this is like take number 6 on these live streams, and I'm still getting it figured out. So hang tight, everyone. Okay. Where? Wait for it. think. I think. Okay. Yes. We are on. Let's see if there's anybody here. Hi, Candy. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you are liking my videos. Where is Caitlin? Oh, I'm sorry. I need to get glasses apparently. Your name is Caitlin. Gotcha. Hugs back at you. Okay, Doug says I was frantically hitting refresh waiting for this to start and get the link. Is there a way to load it and announce it before? But I don't know. Um, you know, I I don't know for sure. So I was thinking that if you have subscribed to the channel, that there's an alert that goes out that says when I'm live, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It's confusing on my end because there's kind of like this dashboard like back end kind of panel to YouTube, and it's very different from like what you guys see. And so I can't really tell what you guys see. So but the let's see, outside of I think like subscribing to the channel to be alerted to it, which I'm pretty sure that you're already subscribed to the channel. It just know that it'll be every Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. 8:30 p.m. So let's see. Caitlin says it's in Kentucky. So this I swear, like I must be really easily amused because I just get the biggest kick out of meeting people from like all over the United States and all over the world. It's so cool. So let's see. And then we have a person called Overcoming Understanding who says, I've started my own channel and you're such a huge inspiration to me. That's flippin' awesome. I love hearing that kind of stuff. That's just so cool. Is your channel on narcissism? Let's see. Doug says the honey badgers do a daily show and they give the link with the timer saying the show starts in X number of minutes and hours. Um, that I have no idea how they do that. I'll have to look into it and see. I don't know. This has been seriously like such a huge learning curve for me. This past year has been just absolutely like just a learning curve that I did not even remotely anticipate writing, and it's just thank you guys for bearing with me. Like you've been really patient. So Overcoming Understanding says, yes, my channel is about narcissism. I went through a horrible relationship. Okay, well, how long have you had your channel up for? Awesome. And my videos really helped. Like, that's really, really cool. Andromeda Love Story. The screen name is Andromeda Love Story by the Peace Visionary. My goodness, you guys are like so creative. How do you get this chat space? I didn't get it on my channel. Andromeda, do you have the live stream feature on your channel? See, B Major says, "Hey Dana, I'm in Georgia and I wait for this live stream all week." Very cool. That's really that makes me feel really good. Hey B Major, are you in one of the support groups? Just out of curiosity. The reason I ask is because the one group in Facebook, at least every group's kind of like doing their own thing, but there's one group on Facebook it's called I have like so many different names for stuff. I wish that's like one of the millions of things I wish I would have done differently is just named everything the same. But I the one group in Facebook, they are doing a like kind of a get together Christmas party online. And so there's just lots of stuff. Oh, okay. Overcoming Understanding says, I literally started my channel yesterday. I've been writing the outlines for them for a few weeks. I want it to be super organized. Well, that is awesome that you had that clarity like ahead of time. I did not at all. And I wish I had. So I'll have to put together some sort of like year in review kind of thing because I've learned a ton of lessons and it like just I learned so many lessons and it really the whole step of the way I just kept thinking like man I really have a lot to learn and so one of the biggest things I have learned with my channel is really like get comfortable in your message and it'll take some time to kind of figure out exactly like what your message is. I didn't really even feel like I necessarily had a message. I just felt really pulled to just start talking about this. So and just realize you're going to get people that are going to say some negative things. I really underestimated that. And I mean, I'm very fortunate, and this is still a new channel too, but very fortunate that my, channel, the level of like trolls and really negative feedback has been like less than 1%. So, you know, but still, I wasn't prepared for it. So, it's intense. Definitely like like what you're doing, like reaching out to other YouTubers, especially in like this niche. There's a handful of them. We'll see if Randy Andretti hops on. She's talks in this niche, and there's me. There's let's see, who else do I normally talk to? There is Show Boundaries. There's a couple other people, and so that's a good resource if you kind of need some support while you're doing this because I I had this huge learning curve as far as just the technology side of it all with like a blog and YouTube and Facebook and and I just learned Instagram like last week. I still don't really understand Twitter. There's just so much out there, and it's it's been totally overwhelming. But there's been a huge learning curve too, like on a personal growth and like self-esteem kind of level. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but man, there were like, I'm not, no lie, like, there were some days where I really had a hard time getting out of bed, and I still kind of have that. So I guess just kind of know that going into it. And I hope that you're healed enough to kind of weather that storm. And so if you're not, then, reach out to some of us other YouTubers and, um, you know, just connect and we'll support you in this because I think it's awesome that you're talking about what happened to you. I think the more people kind of share their experiences and the more people, because different people are going to resonate with different people, right? And so just the more awareness we can bring to it, the more healing can happen. So let's see. Whoa, we've got Model Mayhem here from Hong Kong. That's so cool. Yeah, Overcoming Understanding says, I feel fantastic that there is a name for the narcissistic codependent relationship. For a long time, I felt so insane. No joke, right? Like, I can relate to that. I felt the exact same way. Um, B Major says, you still struggle because I beat myself up for not being more advanced in my healing. Oh my gosh, yes, yes. I feel like I'm healed from my narcissistic relationships. The like kind of for me like the next big wave in all of my healing and understanding has really been really kind of like rediscovering myself. And so not even rediscovering, because that implies that I had a good grip on that ahead of time, and I didn't. Like, I don't think I ever, I think it's just been recently that I've really been getting in touch with kind of who I am. And so we can talk a little bit about that tonight because I had like a ton of aha moments today. And I think that, my guess is because we're all kind of the same, which is so weird, right? That it'll resonate with a lot of you guys too. And I'll be curious to kind of see like what you have, what your thoughts are on everything. So let's see. Let's see. Somebody had asked me a little earlier about what my board means, what all is on there. Valid question. I covered this in one video, but I'll cover it again tonight. So this board, I call this my Buddha board, and this is just a cheap styrofoam board, nothing fancy here, with duct tape on the back. And I made this shortly after Jack and I, well, after I found out he was living a double life, and then I broke up with him. This I don't know. I was reading a lot of Eckhart Tolle during a time, and this was just kind of, I think, a lot of my major takeaways from his work. And so this board like kept me focused and it kept me sane. And so this is really kind of the mindset and the attitude that I wanted to cultivate. So this is where this comes from. So I'll go through this board really quick here. So I'm not sure how much you can see. It says, make the present moment your friend. And this was obviously like a huge thing because the moment, like Caitlin had asked earlier, and I'll kind of cover that more in detail too, is the big struggle was a lot of like PTSD kind of stuff, night terrors, and feeling that state of like hyper arousal where just incredible amounts of anxiety. I really did not know what was going on. I knew what I had experienced was not a normal relationship, and it didn't end normal. And but I didn't have really like that devalue stage done to my face that a lot of other people have. And so it just, none of it made sense to me. And so yeah, so for me it was just making the present moment my friend, which to me means like finding enjoyment, finding some sort of making myself feel good and actually enjoying the moment. So taking time out, gratitude is huge, like huge for this. So taking time to, if you're first thing in the morning, like making a cup of coffee and just really like tasting the coffee and feeling the warmth of the cup and watching the sun come up and listening to the stillness and just being so just immersed in the moment and just really just squeezing out all of the appreciation for the moment that you possibly can. That whole feeling of gratitude was probably, I think I would even say that might have even saved my life a couple times because I really hit some really low spots in all of this. And so just taking time out and like little things, because at that point in my life, I was so incredibly low. I was losing everything, like everything. After Jack, and then especially again, like after Steve, and I just went through, I like outside of developing cancer, I just kind of feel like it was just one thing after another. And, um, you know, really just taking time to just say thank you. Just thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you. or universe, or kind of whatever you're comfortable with, or just saying thank you. Just saying thank you. Like, I am so, um, you know, outrageously thankful and grateful for the this amazing cup of coffee. I am so radically thankful and grateful for you know these socks on my feet that are so warm. I just really enjoy that, and I'm so thankful and grateful for seeing some baby ducks this morning, or kind of whatever it was, and just hanging on to that moment and being at peace with it is really huge. So other things on the board: bring changes into awareness one at a time. I was in such a scramble with trying to get my life back on track. And hindsight being what it is I literally was in a scramble. And so I wasn't thinking clearly. I was making a bunch of decisions, kind of on impulse, thinking like, it was just this feeling of like, I need to make all these decisions yesterday. I'm behind the ball and I just need to hurry up. And I didn't realize that I wasn't thinking rationally. And so I just need to like slow things down, and it's okay. Like, you're going to heal in the time that you're going to heal. Everything is going to be okay. So just be kind to yourself and take things slow. Let's see. Release judgment of people and events. That's a really, really big one, like really big one. And what I mean by that is, like, I had the realization that, life, like events in life, and I forget who said this, like a famous person said this, but I can't think of who it is right now. Like, events in life are really neutral. Like, we are the ones that assign meaning to them. And so realizing that, like, events aren't good or bad, was really like profound. It helped me to kind of distance myself, step back a little bit emotionally, and get rid of that judgment of this is really, really bad. And instead stay open, which is also on my board somewhere. Yes, the next one. Stay open to possibilities. And so to stay open to possibilities, it helps to release judgment. And so if you can get rid of the ideas or the concepts of good and bad, and you can realize that events just are neutral, and it's up to us as to what meaning we want to assign to them, then it was kind of the realization of, well, if I get to choose the meaning, then I guess I might as well choose the most empowered meaning. And so then that kind of led to this idea of, well, what would that be? Like, what would the most empowered meaning be? And then it was the realization of, well, if I were to believe that this was not happening to me, but happening for me, then what would that mean? Like, how would I perceive this differently? Like, what kind of meaning would I get out of this? And asking, like, reframing my understanding of that whole situation, and really realizing this is happening for me. It led to I'm not, oh man, and it's been like 6 years now. It's just been like wave after wave after wave after wave of amazing, amazing insight. And that's really why I feel like at this point in my life that I can honestly look back on what happened to me and say without a shadow of a doubt that what happened to me was it. I was able to make it into some of the best things that have ever happened to me. And it's because I really used all, as much as I humanly could, all of that negative emotion, that intensity, that all of it, I really poured it into like personal growth and introspection. And and then I guess kind of also on that, what led me to do that was probably the initial decision. So I guess that's kind of where it all started, was the initial decision of I was not going to let this ruin my life. Like, that's where I think probably right, everything, like that's that was the major decision that everything kind of grew out of. And just deciding that, like, I didn't know how, because I really felt like my life was pretty ruined. Like, I just knew, I'm like, I'm not going to let this destroy me. And then it was the whole idea of, well, if I make this into if I assign the most empowered meaning to this, then what would that mean? And then the most empowered meaning was, well, if I'm not going to let this ruin my life, then what if I were to make this into some of the best things that have ever happened to me? Like how would I even begin to go about that? And of course, like during all this, you're not sleeping at night. So like I had many nights where I was laying awake really thinking about all this and really thinking about how I could make the absolute best out of this opportunity and these situations and turn these situations into opportunities. And I talk about this too in other videos. I really kind of gravitated towards having different mantras during all of this. And so one of mine was, the best revenge is a good life. And I just kept telling myself that over and over again, especially when I would hit those really low points, and which was really easy to do because I like just I like I just really had pretty much nothing in my life. I mean, it was really, really by far like the most depressing time in my life. But I think oftentimes personal growth, like that transformative period that we all go through, tends to be like that. It tends to be at our worst place. So let's see, what else do I have here? So stay open to possibilities, because you never know. And actually, too, kind of with the whole staying open to possibilities thing. So here's kind of been like one of my latest revelations. I was kind of talking about this a little bit earlier with my whole channel and like this really wild learning curve like that I've been writing. I've come to recently realize in the past month or so that we all have three different lives. Okay. We have the life that we wish we had, right? This is kind of the life that we feel that we should have. And then we have the life that we're living. And then we have the life that's really kind of trying to live through us. And I know that that sounds kind of hippie woo and like metaphysical, and maybe it is. I don't think it necessarily needs to be, but there's a lot of truth to that. And I can look back on my own experiences, and they, like with this whole channel, I just wanted to start a blog and like talk about things, and it's just been this whole like plinko effect where next thing I know, a friend recommended I start a podcast, and then I ended up starting a YouTube channel, and then it's just kind of like just been this wild ride that I have just been trying to keep up with it all. It's like I just feel like there's just this life and this energy that's trying to just this life that's trying to live through me. So it's interesting. And I think we all have that. I don't think I'm like somehow special or unique in that. And I think we can all tap into that too by really paying attention to how you feel. And so I had spoken a little bit earlier about, feeling pulled to do my blog. And then I felt really, like crazy pulled. Like within the first month of doing my blog, I put out about 90 posts. I was writing about 3 posts a day, and I just was on fire about all of it. I was just consumed with it. And then when I began my YouTube channel, I did the same thing. And so I've been on YouTube now for what, like 7 months, maybe? I think I started at like the beginning of May. So however long that is. And I have about 140 videos up. And I didn't make any of them ahead of time. And it's just, I felt pulled to do it. And so I would encourage you, I guess the point of all of this is to see where that is kind of coming out in your own life. What things are pulling you towards them? Like, what excites you? What do you feel passionate about? And this is kind of the benefit of going through a relationship like this. So like when we look around and we're like, wow, my life has been reduced to rubble. The benefit of having your life blown apart is you get to pick the pieces with which to choose to rebuild your life with. So like you get to pick the pieces that you rebuild with. And it's just kind of this clean slate in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong, I get it's totally overwhelming, but there's a lot of growth that can really come from that. And so I would just encourage you to pay attention to how you feel. Move in the direction of what feels good, and like what excites you and what you feel passionate about, and really learning how to kind of just like nourish yourself, which is really like feeling good. And it starts off and this is all part of healing, by the way, too. So and preventing from having this ever happen again. Because here's the thing, like once you really get in tune with how you feel, because that's I think that's really where all of us go wrong. All of us, I can honestly say after hearing thousands of stories now, we all saw or felt some red flags and we glossed over them. And we kind of rationalized them, right? We justified it, we rationalized it. And this is another kind of part of what I wanted to talk about tonight was this whole idea of like self-esteem and crumbs. And I think a lot of us have gone through life telling ourselves, or somehow some way we got the message that we just need to be grateful for crumbs, and that these types of like relationships or friendships or jobs or what have you that are kind of like a 6 out of 10 on like a scale of fulfillment, that somehow should be enough. And to want anything more than that was greedy, or it was selfish, or it was extravagant. And so I think because, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you know, I'm speaking from my perspective here, so I don't want to speak for everybody, but my guess is this is probably kind of a reoccurring theme with a lot of us. And because we're so used to trying to make do with just crumbs, that we have really lost touch with how we really feel about things. Like we're not comfortable with really going after what we want. And so we try to make something that's, problematic or mediocre work for us. And that never, ever works. So, it's learning to learning what it feels like to treat yourself with value, learning what it feels like to go for, really good feeling experiences. And so my friend and I were having this conversation yesterday about, there was this, I was cleaning out my desk. I have no idea where this quote came from. I have no idea who said it, but it was just like in this stack of papers, and it was like a total game changer for me. And so the quote was something along the lines of like, you know, only, go towards experiences or people that are a 9 or higher, like a 9 or a 10 out of a 10 scale of fulfillment. If it's an 8, then it might as well be a 0. And I remember like reading that and thinking, wow, that seems really like really high achieving, like, then thinking about my own life. Well, how many experiences do I have that are even an 8, let alone a 9 or a 10? And it really just, I began really thinking, like, what do I really enjoy, and how much of my life have I been living, with kind of always going with plan B, or going based off of default, or just just like making, just rationalizing, just justifying why I couldn't really have what I wanted to have. And so it's been interesting. So that's kind of what I've been going through. So somebody had asked me earlier if I, kind of healing process and all of this. So that's been my big thing, is really getting in touch with who I am, and how, and that really starts with how you feel about things. Because once you really are able to identify what feels good and what makes you feel excited or joyful or playful or happy or passionate or fearful or angry or depressed, or and really getting in touch with all of your different emotions, once you have a good grasp on that and you're starting to pay attention to exactly how you feel, like I'm talking dozens of times throughout the day. So like going and looking at things in your house and being like, okay, like this glass, I actually really like these glasses. I would say this is a 10 on like my fulfillment scale. I really like these. I really like writing with like these kind of gel pens. This is a 10 experience for me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like this lip balm here, this Blistex, this is probably about a 7. and like really getting clear on where kind of things are on this scale. And the more clarity you have, so the cool thing with this is like once you start identifying how you feel about kind of, inanimate objects or whatever in your house, then you can start kind of turning that, um, you know, perception to different like relationships and friendships even, and starting to pay attention to like, so the more you're in tune with how you feel, the more you're going to be in tune with your intuition. And so when you start having those kind of red flags, if they do surface, they probably will surface because that's, that tends to happen. It's not, you're not going to be so quick to justify it or minimize it. Like you're going to take it seriously and you're going to slow things down enough to really examine like, that's interesting. Like I feel this way, and you're going to have more clarity as to why, and you're going to be more apt to actually take that feeling seriously, because like, okay, well, this person or this relationship is registering as confusing or uncomfortable or potentially like unsafe or dangerous. And now that you're practicing, you're paying attention to like what other things that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis feel like that, or what things feel good. You're going to really gravitate like naturally away from things that don't feel good, and you're going to really gravitate towards things that do feel good. So, okay, I've been kind of rambling here. Let me finish my board and then I'll go up and we'll do some questions here. See, be in the now. So that kind of goes back to making the present moment your friend. Living an authentic life. So kind of like everything that I was just talking about with really paying attention to, how you feel. That really is where, it's to live an authentic life. It starts with knowing yourself. So like before you can really be yourself, you have to know yourself. And kind of knowing yourself starts with, again, like really getting super keyed into how you feel about things, and releasing these ideas. And this has everything to do with like codependency and boundaries and all of this. So like once you really get a good grip on, kind of what you like. And this does take practice. Like it's really wild. You're probably going to have these moments where you're like, I cannot believe I am, this age, and I don't know. Like I don't know what I really like. And you might have to really do some digging and some sorting out. And I think a lot of people when they start doing this, they think, well, what do I really want? And they might say something like, well, I really want a new car, or I really want $1 million, or I really want, kind of what have you. But once they really start like digging deep, then they start realizing, no, maybe I'm not really that driven for like $1 million, or no, I don't really want a big fancy house, but like maybe what I really do want is a greenhouse. Like that, like super jazzes me. Or, the ability to go glamping in Bali, like, which is actually something I'd really like to do. But to be able to get in touch with that, and to think, and I guess maybe more so than even getting in touch with that, but actually believing that that's possible for you. Because again, I think a lot of us have picked up these messages, either they were real, or kind of unintended messages that we interpreted that somehow we're not worthy of, kind of what we really want, that we somehow need to settle and just make do. So see, detach, and this kind of just goes back to releasing judgment, and then slow down and do less, which just has to do with focusing and being in the moment. And then namaste, which means the light in me honors the light in you. And I love that word. And I know Doug does too. It's I put the poster back up for Doug, as a matter of fact, because I was thinking for the longest time that it was too distracting, and but Doug said he wanted it back. So like I brought it back. Okay, so let me scroll up and kind of see where, let me get some questions here. Oh, and we've got, okay, Meredith and Malaysia. Wow, we have Hong Kong, we have Malaysia, we have Georgia, we have Kentucky. Not sure where everybody else is from, but that's just so cool. Let's see. Andromeda. Um, do you do you talk about narcissism as well? Jody says hi. Hi, Jody. It's nice to see you too. Um, okay, B major, you saying yes that you are on the Facebook page. Um, there is a different group. So they are chiming at me as we speak. Um, I'm going to link to the group if I can. I don't know if that worked. Okay, yeah, it did. It's okay. So the group on Facebook, it's the URL is facebook.com/group/healing after narcissistic abuse. So, okay, Nancy, you mentioned I'm really detaching myself, not into consumerism. It overwhelms me. Kind of just keeping it simple. Yeah, so I am very much the same way. I get a lot of comments from people about like my lack of like fashion sense on my channel. But yeah, it's very freeing. To not care, and that's kind of been my what I've been trying to find balance with is trying to figure out, do I not care because I don't think it's somehow like possible for me to have like do I am I not interested in nice things because I truly don't care about nice things, or am I not into nice things because I somehow like bought into the idea that I shouldn't have nice things. And so it's been interesting for me to like kind of try to figure out like, and this again just goes back to paying attention to your feelings and letting those guide you, because I'm not like the thought of wearing a bunch of like brand name stuff like is probably like a 0 on a scale of 0 to 10 for fulfillment. It just does absolutely nothing for me. But having like high quality organic food is like a 10 out of 10 for me. And yeah, I don't know. It's just this kind of this interesting process where you just start seeing your life through like a fresh set of eyes. And I mean, for me, I'm like, wow, I feel like I've been asleep at the wheel. Like, how is it that I have, so much stuff in my life that is like a 6 out of 10? I mean, it's sad. Like, it's really sad. Really. It's just the stuff that I have compromised on. I mean, yeah, it's just terrible. Um, let's see. Oh, I meant to ask before we kind of get going here, because we're averaging about 1 or 2 trolls like per live stream. Does anybody want to be a moderator for tonight? Let me know. It would be cool if we could get like 1 or 2 moderators. So that way, if you guys do see trolls, because I just apparently get to talking and then like I can't keep up with the comments, and so there's trolls coming in and I can't monitor it all and do this as well. So while I'm waiting for some volunteers, Kim asks, Dana, I tend to think that codependents or empaths are vulnerable to relationships such as these. What are your thoughts on empaths? Okay, so yes and no. I think that, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit last time. So with a lot of us, I think, would identify as empaths, and it's one of those things like if we don't have a good grip on our feelings, like if we're so keyed into how everybody else is feeling because that's how it tends to go, like that's what I've been discovering. Like my strong suit has always been like instantly knowing, like just and I think it's because I grew up with a grandmother that had Alzheimer's, and so I had to learn a lot of like really keying into like subtle things, and because there wasn't a lot of like verbal language, and so I just was like a deeply sensitive, keyed in kid. So but that's been really interesting for me because this past week or so realizing I really wasn't keyed into myself. And so here's the thing with empaths. I think until we are really keyed into ourself, we are incredibly vulnerable because we can't tell where we end and where somebody else begins, and it's really hard for us to walk away from people because we tend to really fall for feeling needed. We have this tremendous, or at least I did, have this tremendous sense of obligation, and I just wanted everybody to feel just like loved and supported and nourished and valued and all of these things. And but then I kind of realized, well, it's got to be a two-way street because I was kind of doing the whole like, well, I'll sink myself to save you, and that's not, like, it has to be a win-win situation. And so kind of the more I think that empaths can clue in to how they're feeling, the more they can really realize like the tremendous abilities that we have. Then it does not become a vulnerability at all. It becomes the exact opposite, and then we really do become like so keyed in that people. And you guys have probably had this, those of you that identify as being empaths, where people are like, man, are you psychic? Like, you're so intuitive. And or you just, people just know, like you just kind of radiate kind of just this energy, and people can sense that. But once, like I said, but once you like really harness it, and you're working from a win-win place because you're able to continually nourish yourself, and you have enough positivity and enough nourishment to give to others, then it really just creates like this awesome cycle where like you're giving, and then they're giving, and then you're giving, and then they're giving, and it's just everybody is just so incredibly nourished. I was reading an article the other day on empaths, and it was the gal who wrote it summed it up, and I wish I'd written down the wording, but she described it so perfectly. She said something along the lines of that empaths kind of like were to like an emotional environment what like plants are to a physical environment. So like plants help to clean the air, and they like kind of reoxygenate things, and they're really great for environments. Well, empaths do the same thing. Like we kind of clean up energy, and just kind of just get everything back into like emotion. There's just emotional regulation, and I thought that was really, really, really right on, because the people that I've met in my life, even though I've never really identified them as being empaths, like now I would use that word, but before I wouldn't. I didn't know that word existed. I think back to them and I'm like, man, I felt so amazing and empowered and alive and just amazing and nourished in their presence. And so that's where like the kind of the power of empaths come from, or what it can be. Um, let's see. Let's see. B Major asks, how long since your last narcissistic relationship do they reach out? How do you deal? Um, the last like major one was Steve, and that's been, and I have like the worst sense of time. It's been a solid probably 2.5 years. Let's see. Okay, Normand has a question. Yeah, go for it. They and Steve and Jack do not reach out. And I don't even know if I really would know if they reached out because I have them blocked. And it would probably like rattle me a little bit just because I live 26 hours away from them. And I don't ever look over my shoulder. I don't worry. I don't even think about them like at all. So it would probably like be a little disconcerting, but I, this kind of goes back. Well, I'm not going to let anybody steal my happiness or my joy. So I frankly really, they have no control or power over me like whatsoever. And it's like, I'm not even worried about it. Overcoming understanding says, didn't you say you needed some mods? Yes, I did. And how about I make you one? I'm going to just make you one. And so if you don't want moderator power, no pressure. You don't have to use it. But if you see any trolls or anything, feel free to um, you know kick them out or what have you. Um, let's see. Okay, Andromeda saying, okay, have your ex seen your YouTube videos? Because my ex and his ex family stalks me like that. Um, you already made a police report against some death threats. They have not seen my YouTube videos as of yet. I'm sure it is just a matter of time. Um, I yeah, like when I started this channel again, like there were it's like anything else that any of us do, right? Like we move forward based on the knowledge that we have at the time, and we're going to make mistakes, and when we know better, then we can do better. And so when I started this channel, I really wasn't that familiar with YouTube. I hadn't ever spent like a ton of time watching YouTube. The only YouTube videos I really watched a lot of in the past were Eckhart Tolle. And so, um, you know, I could kick myself for some of the things that I did that I didn't think about, such as like tying my real name to this. So, um, and Andromeda says I can be a mod for 45 minutes. Um, okay, bye, Mike. Here's kind of the thing, like with a lot of, the quote unquote trolls. I think people, I don't know how they kind of just stumble into like these live streams, but I guess kind of my goal is that they at least kind of get curious about this topic, because this topic really affects everybody. It really really does. Like odds are that they themselves have been abused, or that they know somebody that's been abused, or they have a parent who was abused or is abusive, or abuse affects everybody. It really really does. And so, oh, Mike says I'm no troll. Well, that's good. So, um let's see. Well, here's something that I wanted to bring up. This is kind of way off topic, but I guess kind of maybe not really. Maybe this is kind of a good segue. So earlier today, I received an email from a guy who is in, I'm not sure if it was from the Facebook page or from one of my groups. I'm still waiting to hear back from him. But we were talking about kind of gender bias and abuse. And that he's had some difficulties with support groups, especially online, and women attacking him. And so, this goes back to like one of the like many things that I didn't think about when I started this channel. One of the many things I wish I would have done differently. And so, when I started my channel, I I took a lot of really well-intended but kind of like bad advice. And one of that pieces of bad advice, or one of those pieces of bad advice, was to really talk about what I was familiar with, which makes total sense. Well, I spoke about abuse from my experience. So as a victim and also working at a domestic violence shelter. So I worked with lots of women and their children. So I talked a lot about female victims. And so like the first probably 40 or so of my Red Flags of a Narcissist series, I talk about my own experience. Well, and the unintended consequence of that is I really ended up minimizing what men go through as far as with abuse. And I had no idea. And it just made me absolutely sick to my stomach that I didn't realize that. And I think it's really kind of sad and terrible as a society that we just don't recognize men as victims of abuse. And there's a lot of kind of re-education that needs to be done about that. And so with men have the added challenge of when they go through an abusive situation, and a lot of them go through the exact same thing, if not worse. And so, they try to get into support groups, and a lot of women are there because they had a narcissistic, abusive, former spouse or former boyfriend. And so and I get it, because I would have been there too had I joined a support, had I even thought to join a support group, like when I was going through all of this. But a lot of women they do not want anything to do with men. They're very very sensitive to even a man's presence in the support group. It's just they feel very vulnerable. They feel very violated, even just having a guy in there. And so this was something that we had to kind of ride this learning curve through. In my first support group, we had one guy join, and I had about 3 women that absolutely just went wild. I mean, they were on the attack, and it was just totally unprovoked, but it really, really triggered them. They felt it was sort of like a man that had walked into like the women's bathroom was kind of like where it was. And they were just freaking out on him. And those women ended up leaving the support group. They couldn't even handle it. They didn't feel safe. They weren't comfortable sharing their story. And then shortly after that, and the guy did absolutely nothing wrong. He just showed up trying to get support. Then a little bit after that, I had another woman. The guy had made some sort of again, totally like there was nothing there. Like he said, nothing inflammatory. And she really took it the wrong way and ended up leaving the group. And so it was right around that point that I really realized, wow, men really have a hard time getting support with all of this. And society tends to tell them like, oh, well, if your wife's abusive, it's because, she's a bitch, or it's because that's her time of the month, or there's kind of like no shortage of excuses. To justify abuse. And so that's kind of this big like directional shift that I've taken with my channel, is to really make sure that people understand, like, if you go through an abusive situation, make sure that you're learning the right lessons from this. And so it's really, and this is kind of the way that our brain works. So like when we go through any type of pain, let alone trauma, our brain links up what was different about that situation. And it may or may not be correct. That's kind of the weird thing with it. So our brain's going to link up like what was different. So if we were single before and we didn't have this pain, but now we were married and then we had this pain, we're going to link up the pain came from that person. It came from a man, or it came from a woman. And I talked about this in my other videos. Some like weird kind of, like links that my brain had made up or had connected was, Jack was European. And so I had kind of like this irrational fear of European men. And actually, interestingly enough, like where I lived in New Mexico, there were a lot of European men. It was because of the Air Force base there. So there was just things that weren't, it seemed rational to me, but it really wasn't rational. And our brains just do that. And so that's something that we really have to watch out for. Not only to not, minimize other people's experiences, but we need to make sure that we are able to spot abusive behavior for what it is, and not just think that you know, not just see it in terms of like our experience of, oh, well, this person was abusive because they were a priest. So like all priests are bad, right? Or this person was abusive because they were, Catholic or Italian or, short women with long dark hair, kind of whatever this person sees, and it triggers them to realize that it's not just that. Like anybody can be abusive, and and I go through this all the time, but abusers can be, male or female. They can be young or old. They can be any nationality. They can be any sexual orientation. They can be, a sibling, a parent, a child, a significant other, kind of you name it. So it's really important that we set our scanners for problematic behavior like wide enough so we're set to detect problematic behavior at any turn. But honestly, okay, so like a lot of that will you really won't have to be so like hyper vigilant and focused on like finding problematic behavior once you really start paying attention to how you feel, because you're gonna have that feeling and you're gonna know like there's no need to justify it. Like this situation has enough deal breaker behavior that I can tell by the way that I feel, that this is maybe like a 6 out of a 10 for me. And so because I only go for situations, or, people, places, things, ideas, what have you, that are like a 9 or higher, then it's just an easy way to be like, okay, that's a 6, that's a no brainer. So I hope that helps. Okay, Henry says, my ex-wife is 6 feet tall with dark curly hair. I see a tall woman and I cringe. So, yes, that's exactly how that works. And it's so interesting how different triggers, how we can be triggered. Veronica says, a lot of feminists think that only women can be abused. Yeah. There's kind of like two different viewpoints on, I think, feminism. A lot of feminists do, and again, I think a lot of this is all, kind of unintended consequences. So like it started off this whole movement of like identifying domestic violence and identifying spousal abuse and like what is abuse. It originally started off where it was more of a women's issue, because men tended this, back 50 years, men had all the power. So if you were a woman, you didn't have a credit score. You couldn't buy a house unless you were married. You really people weren't single parents. I mean, you really had a hard go of it, and so women were more easily trapped in these situations. And so it just, I mean, it's amazing how far we've come as a society with kind of empowering both men and women in different ways, but it's kind of like it went too far. And so then all of this education having to do with domestic violence. And again, I was a big part of it. I was working at a domestic violence shelter and was, like I had tons and tons of classes on this. I had several hundred hours worth of domestic violence training. And during all of that, I never had not even 10 minutes on men and violence towards men. So, it's important that we really just be aware of kind of like anybody can be a victim, and it's important that we just, we support each other. So, okay, lots of comments here. M. Fisher says, I think it's why the number of actual cluster Bs is so low. Men don't feel right about reporting being abused by a woman. I think that's a huge, huge part of it. And, and here's kind of the added kicker to that. So like with cluster B personality disorders, these people tend, the exception probably being borderline personality disorder, but narcissists and sociopaths for sure, they don't tend to report for therapy because they never think that they have the problem. It's kind of everybody else. And they really feel entitled to act the way that they act. So any numbers that really come from more of like the antisocial, the sociopath numbers tend to come from prison. And that's why I think the number of male sociopaths is so much higher than females. It's just because men tend to go to prison for violent crimes more often than women do. It's not that women necessarily commit less of them, it's just that men, again, like society is so weird how appearances really do play a big part in it. We like to think that it doesn't, but people tend to think like, oh, well, she's a mother. I can't, or look, kind of the whole Jodi Arias thing, or Casey Anthony. People, I mean, Jodi Arias did go to jail, but it's this idea of like, oh, well, she's cute, or how could a mother possibly hurt their child? So there's like lots of different kind of cognitive dissonance things going on there, where I think women tend to get convicted a lot less. And yeah, society doesn't understand abuse anyhow. Like, even if it falls into more of like that stereotype of it, but they for sure don't understand if it's a big strong guy and it's a woman that's my size. And it's sort of like, well, how? But again, like, it's so frustrating, because they think, well, she's so little, how could she, like, what, you couldn't fight her off? But it's not about strength. It's about everything else. It's all about the emotional manipulation, and it's the emotional abuse and the psychological abuse and the verbal abuse, and it's that slow grinding down, and it's the intimidation, and it's the threats, and it's the, a lot of men fear, they know that if they get a divorce from this woman, that she will take him to court and probably get full custody of the kids, and that she's probably going to get, maybe, half of everything, at least half of everything, and they're going to lose everything. And not only that, but then they're not going to be able to necessarily protect their kids. And I've spoken with a lot of men that have stayed just in an attempt to try to protect their kids. So there's so many different factors at play as to why people stay in an abusive relationship that really have nothing to do with codependency. Um, let's see. Um, let's see. DE asks, I felt like I had lost my mind and couldn't trust my own judgment anymore and didn't know black from white. I had written everything down from the 4-month period to explain to my parents what had happened. So you're not alone in that. I think all of us feel crazy when these relationships, when they end, or even during it. It's And I think in large part it's because, if again, abuse education, there really is no abuse education unless you're going to get into like the domestic violence field. It's not common knowledge. And I had spoken about this in a previous live stream. So I was in a relationship with a guy in high school who was absolutely nuts. I lived in fear of this guy. He never hit me, but he never had to. And it was a really, really bad situation. I did not identify that as being abusive because he didn't hit me. And it wasn't until, fast forward, like, gosh, I don't even know, 12, 15 years, that I began working at the domestic violence shelter, and I was going through my training. And then we were talking about kind of the different forms of abuse and stalking and what all this entailed. And I had to leave the room. I was just sobbing. I hadn't, because at the time nobody took me seriously, and nobody else they thought he was a loser, but nobody else was like intimidated by him. And so it was incredibly validating, just realizing I wasn't crazy. Like, it really was as scary and as of big of a deal as I thought it was at the time. So I think all people go through, even when I was working at the shelter, we would have women come in, and it was this feeling of, my situation's bad, but I bet somebody else's is probably worse. And so they didn't want to take up a room at the shelter. And I've seen some like really, really bad situations, but even still, they were like, well, but I don't really know if mine is abuse. Like, there was still a lot of this confusion as to whether or not, in their mind, that they really belonged there. And it was so there's just like a lot of abuse education that needs to go on. So, oh, let's see. Um, Let me scroll up here. Okay, see, I'm gonna try to scroll and not lose the conversation. Okay, so Norman says, "Well, I'm a man, and after 3 relationships in a row with with narcissists, I'm seeking out help now." And M. Fisher says, "Good for you, Norman." I agree completely. And so that's kind of the thing with narcissists. And to me, I view narcissistic abuse as they are, these relationships, if they're severe enough, and this is kind of, and I know it sounds crazy to even say, but like this is kind of the gift in this is that a really bad relationship with a narcissist is that fire that we can't ignore. But the thing with any fire is there's always smoke. And so a lot of this kind of this settling for crumbs. So if we have a narcissist in our life, by and large, I think a lot of victims can look back on their situation and be like, okay, yes, there were red flags that they glossed over for whatever reason. I mean, like the red flags that I glossed over them because I'm like, well, everybody's got some red flags, and like they were red flags that I felt like most people would have glossed over. And so this really led to my realization. And then I crashed into like and seriously dated Steve. This led to my realization of I had been going through life thinking that there were only 2 types of people, that there were, toxic people, like highly problematic people like this, right? And that there were like normal people. And that was where my thinking was limited, because really there's 3 types of people in the world. There's toxic, there's normal, and then there's healthy. And so each type of person has a different mindset, and different behaviors and different thoughts and feelings and actions and the whole nine. And so I was not able to stop kind of this pattern of kind of these cluster B kind of people in my life, really until I started, really realizing like the key is to pay attention to how you feel. It really, really is like that is how you will stop having these people in your life. And again, like if you have one in your life, odds are that there's probably been a lot more. You just haven't identified them as such. So for example, I would encourage you to look backwards, look back on your life and look at the different friends you've had. Look at the different relationships you've had. Look at the different dynamics, maybe with some coworkers or some bosses or some different situations, and how many kind of one-sided relationships did you have where you were the one that gave and gave and gave, and the other person just took and took and took. And did you find yourself thinking to yourself, man, I feel like this person's an energy vampire, or I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship, which is really weird because and again, I'm sure for like a guy thinking like, well, how could I be in an abusive relationship because I'm a guy? Or I can't be in an abusive relationship because I'm not being hit. So to kind of question, what is your idea of abuse, and kind of when we all have kind of these like limiting beliefs, and it's just part of our culture and kind of what the media feeds us. And so it takes a little bit to untangle like what kind of what we think and like what we're raised to think about certain things in order to actually to just separate those two in order to see them, the situations and everything, for what they are. So a lot of people they might have had a lot of really unfulfilling friendships or very one-sided friendships, or kind of had dated a handful of really jerky people, but never identified it as truly problematic until it took that like one relationship that was so like lifetime TV movie undeniable that it really brought it to their attention. So, um, okay, so Caitlin says, yes, Dana, all I wanted to do was sleep, but I couldn't explain it. He was a vampire. Yeah, they just, um, they take and take and take. And that's where it can get really dangerous if we don't have a good sense of, I think, treating ourselves with value. I think a lot of us probably, for whatever reason, have really struggled with that, or maybe never even really knew what that meant. So, again, in my life, with I thought I had pretty healthy boundaries. I really, really did. And, there wasn't a lot. So, like the guy in high school, there was with that relationship that was like really, really like obviously dysfunctional. There was a lot of like back and forth with that. There was a lot of manipulation on his end. There was, definitely like a lot of like codependent kind of behavior on my part. But with Steve and Jack, I didn't feel like that there was any of that. And so I was really confused as to kind of what I was doing wrong and how I would have handled it any differently. And the answer that I ended up coming up with was, how I would have handled it differently is those relationships would have maybe lasted like a date, like 2 dates, because those red flags surfaced really early on. And where I was going wrong is I was glossing over those red flags. And so this goes back to, I did a video a while back. I need to update it because there's a lot more I want to add to it. So there's this concept, I call empty buckets. And so we have 3 buckets, and so it's kind of like these 3 basic human needs. And so the first bucket, you have a bucket of like safety and security, so like your basic physical needs like food, clothing, shelter, water, air, money, these kinds of things. Then you have the bucket of significance, and so importance, love, affection, those kinds of needs. And then you have the bucket of stability, so just kind of the added reassurance that those other 2 buckets are going to continue to be getting filled. If those 2 buckets, if we're starved out, if those buckets are like bone dry or even like kind of getting empty, if they get empty, the emptier they get, the less clear we're thinking. And so kind of what happens is if somebody comes across our path that is, we think, able to fill our bucket in some way. So for example, for me, my empty buckets at that point in my life were definitely the feelings of significance, like, or lack of significance. So really was feeling very unloved and very unimportant. And so when Jack came along, and then again when Steve came along, I really fell for that love bombing and that whirlwind, all of it. It just made me feel so loved and so important, and so just it just made me felt wonderful. And but I didn't see like there, I mean, I saw some kind of red flag stuff, but I glossed over it. And so what happens is when we do that, we develop, it's, well, not develop because we all already have it, but cognitive dissonance kicks in. And so because it's like our body, our brain really needs us to get these buckets filled. And so in order for us to get these filled, it's like our brain telling us like, just settle. Like, okay, this person's like a 6 out of 10, then that's good enough. Cause they're going to meet some of those basic needs for you. So that's okay. And so that's why you see people, and of course it's always easier to see it in other people, right? Which is one of the main reasons that I am so open about sharing all of my stories, and in hopes that somebody else can learn the lessons that I had to learn the hard way. So hopefully like you won't have to learn them the hard way. But and that's what's great too, by the way, about support groups, is because it's so much easier to see problematic behavior when there's not that emotional attachment to it, is really what it is. So, so what was I saying? So when cognitive dissonance kicks in, you can tell that cognitive dissonance is kicking in. Well, for starters, like now that you kind of have this idea of this number scale of like a 0 to 10 on a scale of fulfillment, now that you're going to be more in tune with, and I would say even shoot for anything that's like an 8 or higher. It's going to probably take some people, myself included, a little bit of time getting used to kind of feeling worthy enough to go after those 9 or 10 type experiences. But once you're able to start identifying like where things are in the fulfillment level for you and realizing that your line in the sand is, anything like, 8 or under, then it's a you don't have to think about it. Like you just know it and then you drive on. And also some other kind of ways that you can key into if you're experiencing cognitive dissonance is if you're using certain words, if you find yourself justifying why you're staying with this person. So using words like, well, yeah, but, okay, that's a sign that you're justifying something. If you're making excuses for, if right, like you find yourself again, like you find yourself justifying like why you're going to go out with this person. If you are telling yourself, here's a good one, if you're telling yourself that you need to be reasonable, that's a sure sign that cognitive dissonance is afoot. So that's just another like more socially acceptable way for us to say, well, we're just justifying things. So don't try to make that shoe fit. Just find a relationship that is that 9 or higher, because they're out there. They're totally out there. And so, and again, like once you get used to feeling good and really enjoying those smaller kind of, highly fulfilling thing. When again, it's silly, right? Like I was using the example earlier of like my little Pilot gel pen. Like I just really I really, really enjoy writing with these pens. I know it sounds really kind of maybe just silly, but it's true. And so, again, my glass, I really like these glasses, and I'm drinking seltzer water in here. I freaking love seltzer water. This is all a 10. Like I love this so much. And so really paying attention to those 9 or 10 experiences. Once you get used to feeling good and you get used to just like paying attention to what makes you feel good and what is like a 5 or a 6 experience feels like and what an 8 experience feels like and what a 3 experience looks like, then you're not even gonna have to worry about it. Oh my gosh, this is like crazy comments here coming up. Okay, Cecilia says, I have been struggling a lot with suicidal ideation a lot lately. Okay, Cecilia, let's talk about that for a little bit. I think a lot of us struggle with that. Okay, and I would encourage you to take the option of suicide just off the table. Like, don't even toy with that. And so, I think if you can just kind of mentally tell yourself like that's just not even an option. It's just not even an option. Do not even allow your brain to go there. And I know, Lord, I know how easy it is to get to that place. But just if you find yourself kind of going down that path, realizing I am not going to let this ruin my life. That you're not. And that you're not going to let anybody steal your happiness, and that there's so much that's good and right with the world. And so when you're feeling that way, when you're feeling so low like that, something that can really help is okay, you also have a crisis plan in place. That's good. So if you're feeling that low, is to take a time out and to start getting grateful. So it changes your focus. They say that anxiety is, it's worry about the future and, or concern about the future. And depression is, anger turned inwards. and it's kind of anger about things that have happened in the past. And that's one of the real benefits from living in the moment, especially when you're kind of going through all of this, is just staying in the moment, because it's really easy to get caught up in the anxiety of an overwhelm of the future, and it's really easy to slide into the depression and all of this. And it might feel like there's many days that you're walking a tightrope between feeling both. So just you know, I'm sorry, I'm kind of reading some questions here. Let's see, hold on. Andromeda. Ah, there's, hold on. Okay, making Andromeda a moderator. So, okay, so Cecilia, I don't know if Cecilia is also going to become a moderator. Like, okay. Um, oh, what was I gonna say? I was just gonna we were just talking about suicidal feelings. Um, oh, okay. So taking time to be grateful, that will really help to calm down those intense feelings and to get you really grounded and in the moment. And it's kind of that first step in feeling good. And I would encourage you, while you're going through all of this, to really just keep I mean, I know it's going to sound nuts, but like, start thinking about how can you make yourself feel good? Like, what, finding enjoyment every single day. So if it's, I watched a lot of comedy during this time. I love Dave Chappelle. I watched a ton of Dave Chappelle. Find something that really makes you laugh. There's YouTube. There's like stand up comedy clips. There's all kinds of stuff. So this goes back to learning to identify kind of your feelings and what makes you feel good, because a lot of us just don't know. So, and here's another technique too, with kind of, this whole like detaching from your feelings, is you can do like a visualization technique where you visualize yourself laying on the ground and you're watching clouds above you and they're kind of just rolling past. And it's kind of like our emotions are very much the same way. We have emotions. They're ongoing. We have thoughts that are just ongoing, all day long. And so this is also kind of as a side note. This one of the main reasons I was really big into Eckhart Tolle at this time is he talks a lot about a lot of different like Buddhist type principles, which is all about like mindfulness and being in the moment. And it was very, very, very helpful. So you might want to look some of his stuff up too on YouTube. But so anyway, so what you do is you kind of detach and you separate yourself from your emotions. And so you watch an emotion go by and you kind of pay attention to like the thought and kind of like what are you thinking about and what the emotion is, and you don't judge it and you don't get caught up in it. You just kind of observe it and you just think to yourself, wow, that's interesting. Like, that's interesting. And then another one will surface. And it's interesting to kind of watch our thoughts and feelings, because they're just really all over the place. So you might have one thought that is really negative, and then the next thought is I think I'm kind of hungry, and then the next thought is, did I put the clothes in the dryer? And then the next thought is, boy, I'm really unhappy. And then the next thought is, I think I want to get my hair cut. Like, it's just this random stream of consciousness that's going through our head, and it really helps to just slow it down. Yoga can be really good during this. There's also some other things that might help too on YouTube. There's a lot of guided imagery, guided meditation videos out there for like stress and relaxation. Highly, highly, highly recommend those. So anything that you can do to just slow your thoughts down and just be, not only be in the moment, but like actually starting to like enjoy the moment. And you know it just takes practice. Okay, let's see other. Let's see. Cecilia says, think about having positive feelings with somebody, but having those feelings be authentic. Yes. Yes. And so that's kind of the thing with these, these relationships, but is, it might have felt really good. Like that love bombing and that rushing of intimacy tend to, if our empty buckets in those areas are low, that part feels so good. And I had a friend of mine when I was going through all of this, and she kept telling me, she's like, Dana, yeah, it felt really good, but just imagine how good it's going to feel when it's real. And I just want to pass that along to you because yes, it's night and day different. And okay, you do guided meditation. That's awesome. So let's see. We have I'm just going to call you Sexy. Sexy says, I know I'm only a minor. I'm only 16, but I sincerely feel like nobody will believe you or believe me. Um I I don't know if you kind of went more into your story and I missed it, which is a very valid possibility. Let's see here. Yeah, Randy, I love that. Randy says you can give real love bombing to yourself. Yes, totally. Like, and that's the cool thing. So once you identify kind of these empty buckets that you have, that's when you know when people, those cliches that are always thrown around, like, well, you need to love yourself and you need to be your own best friend. That's really what they mean. So it's to really treat yourself with love. And so and again, like you'll know if you're being able to fill your own empty buckets based on how you feel. And so you're going to be doing a good job of that if you're identifying kind of what feels nourishing for you. And so it doesn't have to cost any money. It doesn't have to be this whole big production. I mean, so like for example, some of the stuff that I do in my life, right? I make myself, I love pancakes. So I make a big pancake breakfast every single Sunday. And it's just this really nice time for myself. And, it's like little things like that that you can do that just make you feel appreciated. And it just makes you feel good. Or you could do maybe like a pedicure or, just maybe putting in extra, I don't know, time in doing your hair or just pampering yourself, just treating yourself with love and kind of whatever that might mean to you. It means different things to different people and only you have the answer. So it's just paying attention to like what feels, makes you feel good. Randy, oh, that's a great point too. Randy talks about complimenting yourself and yeah, so Louise Hay, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. She is oh man, like she goes way back and she did a lot of kind of like self-help stuff way back when. And she was really big on kind of what she called mirror work. And so a lot of this was kind of like what Randy's talking about, getting in front of a mirror and saying affirmations or talking to yourself. And it's going to feel really silly and maybe even stupid at first, but it's so powerful. And you can maybe do things in a different way. So maybe you might have like the adult side of you talk to the child side of you and just say, okay, like, little Dana or whatever, honey, I'm really sorry that you went through that, but you made it and I'm really proud of you and you did a fantastic job and I love you and I love you. And really, and again, I know it sounds super like just woo woo, but like looking at yourself in the mirror and I think the benefit of looking at yourself in the mirror is it's a way of like convincing yourself that you mean it. And so, you do have value and just, you know, just realizing it. And so one of the questions that I had brought up, I've been bringing up on a pretty regular basis, but one of them is the the question of asking yourself all the time, you know, how could I treat myself with value today? And again, it doesn't have to cost any money. It could be doing little things like making your bed in the morning, or, taking the time to clean out your car, or, again, like brushing your teeth before you go to bed, like little things like that. And then catching yourself when you are treating yourself like value, and letting yourself know, like, this, I'm in slowing it down and being like, this is so enjoyable to have my bed made. And this is so enjoyable to, to take the time to wash my face before I go to bed at night, or kind of what have you. Just paying attention to these things and telling yourself, like, I'm doing this because I love you, and I'm doing this because I value you. Um, okay, Norman says, my ex was thriving on my narcolepsy and making it worse. It was hell. Yes. Yes, they do that. And so that's kind of, here's the thing. So stress manifests in many, many different ways. And if we're really out of sync with what makes us feel good, what makes us feel nourished. And again, this is like a slow descent oftentimes. I mean, that is kind of how abuse happens, right? It's the whole, how do you boil a frog, analogy. It's, you don't put it in a pot of boiling hot water, it'll jump right out. You want to boil a frog, you want to cook a frog, you put it into lukewarm water, you slowly turn the heat up. That's exactly how abusive relationships happen. And so it can just slowly get more and more uncomfortable, and it gets uncomfortable, and then that kind of becomes the new normal, and then it gets uncomfortable, and then it becomes the new normal, and then it becomes uncomfortable, and then the new normal. And so because that being uncomfortable is the new normal, it's really hard to tell sometimes when things are really bad until they're really bad. And a great sign to see if you're out of that alignment with yourself is to see how you're feeling. So feelings like, illness, especially unexplained illness or exacerbated illness, like what you're describing, or feelings of stress, feelings of depression, feelings of anxiety, feelings of worry, feelings of maybe unexplained pain, feeling really tired all the time. These are all signs our body's trying to tell us, like, hey, you know, you're off track. Like, things are off track. Like, you need to get back on track. And so when you're getting back on track by how you feel. And so if you get to feeling better, then you really get more in alignment with being on track. So, okay, I missed it again. Let's see. I wanted to read a little bit more of your background here. Sexy. It looks that seems like a really bad idea for me to be calling a minor sexy on the air. So maybe I'll call you the last part of your name here, which is Chick. Maybe not even that. I'll just call you 123. That's part of your name too. So you're asking, you're in high school, so is it abuse or is it bullying? Well, bullying is abuse. I would agree with Jody. And again, a person doesn't need to have they don't need to have a full blown like personality disorder in order for them to have abusive or problematic behavior. And so again, it's paying attention to how you feel. So if you're getting bullied by this person, I don't know if you've been able to tell other people, like other adults or other teachers, or kind of more of like what the situation is. But and I'm not even sure exactly where you live, if you're in the United States or if you're overseas. But so like the guy that I had mentioned earlier, I was in a relationship when I was in high school, and I was about your age, and he was knowing what I know now, like hands down was a sociopath. Like he was, that's that's the profile. Like that's how that kind of stuff goes. And so incredibly dangerous person. He just didn't care whatsoever. And, he was in and out of jail and just had this complete lack of regard and empathy for others, and just really, really scary stuff. So again, this kind of goes back to abuse is abuse is abuse. And you can have an abuser that is a teenager, and they can be just as dangerous and just as destructive as an abusive person who's an adult. So it's the age. And yes, I would agree. I think people are, again, they're less inclined to take uh, teenagers seriously. That's kind of one of like the common justifications of, oh, well, they're just in high school and their hormones are running crazy. And, maybe he's picking on you because he likes you. I've heard that a lot of times. These kinds of justifications, that it's a lot of really well-intended but very ignorant advice that people tend to give victims when they're in these kinds of situations. And, you know, you need to do what you need to do in order to stay safe and sane as much as possible. So just, and if you feel comfortable enough talking to an adult about it, I would see if that's something that you could do. But you are definitely not alone, and there are many, many, many support groups out there for for people of all ages that are being bullied. So you don't have to go through this alone. So please just know that. Norman, that's a great question. Norman asks, does being abused as a child attract narcissists later in life? I know it can be seen on my face somehow. People often ask me if I've done prison time. Well, let me answer 123's question here, Norman, and then we'll come back to yours. And okay, so 123 says, I've told my parents about him, but they are very charmed by him. So that's that's very problematic, and it's problematic that they are not taking their own child seriously. So um if it's coming across as bullying and abusive to you, then it's bullying and abusive. And so can you distance yourself from this person? I mean, do you have to see him, or is he like, I guess kind of, is he, what is he doing? Is he coming to your house? Is he bothering you at school? Is he kind of, what kind of stuff is he doing? And so, okay, so 123 says he goes to my school. Can you, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think, people often say to teenagers like, oh, this is the best time of your life, and high school is so wonderful and blah blah. But you know what, though, high school is a really, really hard time for a lot of people. And it's tough because you're just kind of at this in between stage where you don't have a lot of power and control over your life. Okay, he's turned a lot of people against you at school. You feel very isolated. I would encourage you to find a support group online. If you can Google like teen bullying, maybe, or even check on Facebook for like teen bullying. You might want to create a fake Facebook account if you join a Facebook group, so nobody else can see that like you've joined this group, because that could make things worse. Um, so you know, um, yeah, it's tough if nobody's taking you seriously. It's hard to have boundaries because you can't. so easily like leave. Um, so maybe you could talk to your parents about switching schools, and maybe say it's for a different reason if they don't, or if they're not taking the situation seriously. JD says for school, it's like prison for kids. Yeah, yeah, it pretty much is. It's high school is really, really, really rough for a lot of kids. And I feel so bad, right? Because, like, as adults, somehow we forget that. And we totally devalue kids when they're going through a hard time. And, we just tell them, like, oh, high school. I don't, it's just, it's so, how crazy making for them, right? Especially if they're going through a hard time. And so, you know, please know, like, if you're having a hard time in high school, like, you're not alone. There's lots of people out there that are struggling with it. And the way that you feel is totally valid. It's totally valid to feel, frustrated and overwhelmed and upset and sad and all of these things. But please just know, too, that it really will pass. It will pass. And once you graduate from high school, life is very, very different. I wish somebody had told me that, like when I was in high school. When you get out of high school, there really aren't like a lot of cliques. People tend to associate based on common interests. It's not so much based on the clickiness, and everything really, life in many ways is just very different, and it's a lot easier. There's just not that intense social pressure that there is in high school. So, please just take comfort in knowing that, like, kind of this too shall pass. It's not forever. And I know that, you know, I I wish that there was a way that you were able to get out of the situation. And you know it's maybe talking if you have a school counselor, if you have teachers you can talk to, if you have an adult that you can trust that's kind of in that school system, and letting them know that you're not comfortable, that you want to switch classes, that you're being bullied, and keeping a paper trail, I guess, too, of kind of what's going on. So let's see. Let me scroll up here. I was gonna talk about Norman's question. Let me see if I can find it though again, because I have a terrible memory. Let's see. Okay, Norman, if you're still on, um, okay, cool. Can you repost your question because I cannot find it? Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Do you go to school in the U.S.? Okay, so um, Peace Pom Pom asks Dana, how do we learn to self validate our instincts and intuitions, to trust our own judgment completely, therefore not risking so greatly trust in others? Um, oh, okay, real quick. Okay, you go to school in the U.S. Um, I'm guessing you probably go to private school because there's only 15 kids in your class. If that's the case, then if you go to school in the US, like I would start talking about I if it, I would be like, I am thinking about getting an attorney. Like, this is, you're getting bullied. Like, a lot of schools really take that. And you're in a Waldorf school. You're in a Waldorf school and there's people bullying. Oh my gosh. Like, they're like, that's that's like really, really terrible. That's, oh my gosh. Okay. So yeah, I would go, and I don't know how your parents would handle it, but you could just tell them and just be like, this is what's going on. I'm tired of it. I'm not going to be putting up with it anymore. Like, yes, and Randy's saying schools are responsible for preventing bullying. You could just tell him, be like, I am not going to go back anymore. And, you could refuse to go to school. You could threaten to call an attorney. You could, just tell your parents to be like, this is bullying. This is not okay with me. Like, I need you guys to listen to me. And I'm not going to be treated like this. And then if teachers or principals give you grief, I really like throwing around the word like I am going to get an attorney because this is bullying. I would think that they would start doing something about it. So, okay, so overcoming understanding says nobody took me seriously because I stayed with my ex. And so that's kind of the added challenge a lot of people have. Um, um, because on average, I don't know the stats because men of course are not included really in like abuse statistics for reasons we talked about earlier, but on average women leave an abusive relationship 7 times before she either leaves for good or she's killed. So it these relationships are not easy to get out of because there's so many different factors at play. There's you know there's a lot of you're being manipulated the whole time. So like right there, that's really tough. You've got a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. There's oftentimes that whole mix of like the good times are really good, the bad times are really bad. You're dealing with probably a lot of intimidation, possible fear. There's kind of and of course then there's that when the good times are really good, it's that whole feeling of, well, I really love him. There's this possibility, there's hope, right? There's the hope that he can change. There's hope that this relationship can be what you want it to be. And that's what's so crazy making for people is and then oh my gosh, like there's just so much. And then victims, when they do finally go to leave, and then there's oftentimes not support because then people are like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, like just leave. And I went through this, like the guy that I was telling you about in high school. This is exactly what I went around dealing with. And you know this is, I think, what everybody deals with. And so people don't get it, like, well, why are you still staying? And it's and again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with like settling for crumbs, right? And so if we have kind of gotten this message somehow that somehow we should just settle for crumbs and be grateful for them, then in our minds we're like, well, this is as good as it's going to get. And then plus, if you've got a lot of kind of like this codependency stuff going on where maybe you feel obligated to stay, you feel obligated to try to help him or to fix him, or you're falling for a lot of like the pity and that he's doing, and he's in it. There's so much. And so again, regular like normal people, quote unquote normal people, have this idea of what an abusive relationship looks like. And most people tend to think that the victim is a woman, and that the abuser is a man, and that the man is punching the woman in the face. And if the dynamic is anything different than that, then most people, it doesn't register as an abusive relationship. And so then they're very quick to discount it and be like, oh, well, it's not that bad. Or so what? Like he yells at you from time to time, or like nobody's perfect. Or there's like all kinds of justifications that people make for abusive behavior, which is crazy making for the victim because they're already doubting their sanity because they're being manipulated. So like they don't even really know what's going on. And this was a question that was asked earlier, or people often ask. They think they want to know if they are the problem. And this is why that most people wonder, right, if they are the problem. The episode, I think it was 71 of the Ask a Question show that I just did earlier this week, that the guy was saying, he's like, man, I can't tell. Basically, like he couldn't tell, was this relationship with his, with like his soulmate, or was this person like his, ultimate dream relationship, or was she his ultimate nightmare? Like he couldn't tell. And that, you know, if it's that much of a polarity between like, you know, really good or really bad, then there's something off there, because normal people don't have those two intense extremes to their personality. And I was going to make another point about that. Shoot. What was I going to say about, oh, shoot. Oh, I guess I was just going to keep talking about the crazy making of all of it. Yeah, Randy says we need a national hotline reporting narcs. I totally, like, seriously, honestly agree with that. I feel very strongly that, and this was something that I think a lot of us have a hard time with, is, well, maybe like I think that probably this is pretty universal, but it's the guilt of knowing that this person has a lot of really dangerous or destructive behavior traits, and you're kind of like burdened with this knowledge of that. And so, like, for me, what I went through with Jack, you know, here I am working at a domestic violence shelter, and as an advocate, and my I feel this now for sure, but you know, even back then, I'm like, this is my purpose. Like, I felt, you know, very protective of those women. I've always kind of had this thing for vulnerable people, and and knowing that what Jack was capable of, and realizing that we lived in a small town and that he was probably going to be targeting some of these women, it was a crushing amount of like guilt carrying that around. It still is. And, you know, to me, yeah, there should be some sort of like national registry at a minimum, at a minimum for like antisocials. So frankly, I don't see why that is not the case. And I, you know, I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens in like the next 5 years, because, and I forget where it was somewhere in the UK, I believe, that they just made emotional abuse a crime. So like, it's because before, at least here in the States, it's, you know, it's really hard to prove abuse anyhow. And so a lot of, you know, abuse type cases were thrown out unless it was very, again, unless it fit that model of intense physical abusive behavior. So I'll be curious to see kind of what happens. So, Peace Pom Pom had asked earlier about, the how do we trust ourselves, and how do we prevent this kind of from happening again, and this, you know, trusting our judgment and everything. This takes some time, but a lot of it is, there's a couple different things. So I think first and foremost, it's realizing that we all have those three empty buckets, right? We have the bucket of safety and security, we have the bucket of significance, and we have the bucket of stability. Making sure that you're getting that you are filling those buckets every single day, that you're taking time to like nourish yourself in those three areas. Because if those buckets are anywhere, you know, even close to empty, we quit thinking rationally. And so it's really, really important to have good judgment. Those buckets have to be filled. It's sort of like, if you are really hungry, if you haven't eaten, you know, all day, and then you go grocery shopping, you're probably not going to make good decisions at all, right? And like, depending on, and then if you really haven't eaten in like 2 days, and then you go grocery shopping, you're really not going to make good decisions. It's the same thing with these other empty buckets. So making sure that you have, you know, you have a, you know, a social support system, that you have friends, that you are actively doing things with them, that you are able to nourish yourself, make yourself feel loved, make yourself feel important, make yourself feel, you know, giving yourself affection. And pets can be great for this too, but, you know, doing like treating yourself with value. And so that kind of step one, filling your own empty buckets. You know, step two is really getting in touch with your feelings and paying attention to, how do you feel about things. And we talked about this, I think, before you hopped on to the call, but or whatever this is, the live stream, paying attention to how you feel. And so, you know, because if our buckets are getting empty, that's when cognitive dissonance kicks in. We're not thinking clearly. We're making really terrible decisions. We don't know it generally until it's too late. So, making sure those buckets are full. The whole paying attention to how you feel. So verbalizing this, and so walking around and identifying on the scale of kind of nourishment or scale of fulfillment on a 0 to 10, 10 being incredibly nourished, 0 being not at all, looking around and asking yourself, any little thing like, okay, this cell phone case, what is this to me? Like, how much enjoyment do I get out of this? And maybe I'm neutral about, like, maybe this is like, for me, I like this. I like this case. This is probably about an 8 for me. Okay. And then I talked earlier about my glass. I really like this glass. This is a 10. I really like sparkling water. This gives me a 10 on enjoyment. I really, and it's interesting because you're going to start to identify like certain things, like, for whatever reason, I have a lot of like button down blouses. I hate button down blouses. I don't know why I ever bought them. I must have thought I should have bought them for some reason. And, so like really keying, and it sounds so silly and it sounds so obvious, right? But like really keying into, what do you like? How do you feel? And once you become more comfortable and more aware of identifying how you're feeling with different things that don't matter as much, right? Like my pen doesn't really matter that much. This doesn't matter that much. It's all kind of, it's kind of the icing on the cake of life, these little kinds of, little level 10 experiences. But once you get really in tune with that in ways that don't matter so much, when the ways that do matter come up, like relationships or friendships or jobs or these kinds of things, then it's going to be much easier to identify, like, ooh, that guy is really kind of cool, but we really don't have a lot in common, or that kind of is maybe like a 6 out of 10 for me, or a 7 out of 10, or a 4 out of 10. Like you're going to be able to see it clearly. But again, like the only way that you will be able to see red flags and act accordingly is if your buckets are full. If your buckets are anywhere near empty, you're going to keep repeating the pattern of dating and having friendships with problematic people. Because when we're in a scramble like that, it's weird. Like our brain kind of shuts down and we lose perspective. And so we become very impatient because we're starved out. It's the same. It's like going to the store and being like, you know what I'm talking about. Like you go into the grocery store and like right away you're like, oh my God, like you go to the bakery and then it's done. Right. And next thing you know, you are like eating donuts and all kinds of like stuff that you might not even normally eat because you are so, and you can't, like, you haven't even paid for them. Do you know what I mean? Like you're eating them as you're like walking around the store because you're so hungry, and you're telling yourself like, well, I'll just tell the cashier that I had like 3 donuts. That's what happens when you're starved out and you're not making good decisions. So that's how you can trust your judgment, is just learning to really tune in to yourself. So, okay, I'm sorry, I missed a bunch of this. Oh, hey, Adrian. Um, yeah, okay, so here's an example about, kind of narcissist. Like, here's a total narcissist thing. So, my mother's second husband was diagnosed as a narcissist. And she had been in therapy for a while and, trying to cope with her marriage that wasn't working and trying to figure out kind of, this is what a lot of us do, right? Like, well, what can we do different? And because we're being told that we're the problem and that we're too sensitive and all of these things. And so her therapist had told her, like, he is a narcissist and they do not change. And she realized right then, like, okay, it's over. And so she got a divorce. Well, he ended up going to 3 different psychologists, and all of which he had a psyche evaluation done, and all 3 of them came back as that he was not a narcissist. And so he was trying to prove to my mother, see, I'm not a narcissist. So therefore, like, you shouldn't divorce me. And my mom was so irritated by that because she was like, you know, because they can be very charming, and it's not like when a person's getting a psych eval, like, these things are not, it's not a hard science. It's not like drawing blood and then determining whether or not a person has like diabetes, or whether or not a person has like a low white blood cell count. Like, it's not like that. It's very kind of, any clinician can only determine what kind of personality disorder a person has kind of over, unless they're really, really highly trained and they do evaluations all the time. It's really common for cluster B people, especially narcissists and sociopaths, especially sociopaths, antisocials, to charm them and to snow them into thinking that there is no problem. So, let's see. Let's see. Okay. Martine is asking if you think you're too sensitive. I no. I really don't think that I don't think that people are too sensitive, right? Like, you are who you are. And so if certain things bother you, and the people around you are, like, not willing to respect that, then it's not necessarily that you're being too, and it's not necessarily that you're being too sensitive, and it's not even necessarily that they're not like respecting your boundaries. It's just that it's not a good fit. And so this kind of is what goes, kind of what I've been trying to say for like a long time now. It's not about the label of just a narcissist or just a sociopath or an antisocial. Like, it's it's really keying into what makes you feel good. Because again, like, you could be around a person that doesn't have a personality disorder, right? They don't have to be like this huge, like, glaring, big time obvious problematic personality. They could just simply, they could be a really nice person that you have absolutely nothing in common with. And the result is, in many ways, it's very similar. Like, it's not going to be a nourishing dynamic between you and that other person. So it goes back to knowing yourself and not settling for crumbs, realizing that, you know, and I think here's something else I think a lot of us tend to do too, is after these relationships, because we are so used to settling for crumbs, we're so focused on, because, and we still have empty buckets, right? We haven't learned to fill our buckets, but we start dating, and then we might even encounter somebody that's really nice, and then we feel really bad if we're not attracted to them, and then we spin ourselves into like this whole like whole nother like level of craziness where we're like, what's wrong with me? How come I'm not attracted to this person? I must have issues. It's that narcissist, and man, that love bombing, the highs were so high, and I'm never gonna find anything like that again. And I must just not be attracted to nice people. And we really spin ourselves into a tizzy when the simple reality might just be that that person's really, really nice, but it's like not your people, you know? And you will know, like, if it's your people based on how you feel. And so if you're with other people that you are really enjoying yourself and you're enjoying the conversation and things are clicking and it feels just enjoyable and effortless, and you're excited to see them and these kinds of things, and you know that you're thinking clearly because you've already got your buckets full, right? Like, you're doing that every single day. You're making efforts to keep your buckets full. Like, you're making that a priority. So you know that you're thinking clearly because you haven't developed that kind of all or nothing thinking, that's empty bucket thinking, right? So that's another way to tell if you need to really work on your empty buckets, is if you get asked out by a person, or some person shows interest in you, and you have this idea of, well, I either need to make this work for them or I'm going to be alone forever. If it's that kind of like scarcity mentality. So that's not rational. And it's because, it's it's a starved out mentality. And so there's lots of people in the world, there's lots of really cool people in the world, there's lots of people that would be on that scale of fulfillment of like, a 9 or a 10 or an 8, if you're not even comfortable going quite to like a 9 or a 10. That, 8 or higher. Like, go for those experiences, go for those people, go for those relationships, and just tune into that. And then you're not going to be worried about, you're not going to find yourself tangled up in the, is it him or is it me, or do I have issues, or this, that, and the other, because you're able to think clearly. You are really able to, it's only once we start thinking clearly that we can then move on to really the next step, which is knowing thyself and really knowing yourself. And this kind of goes back to, again, like the whole getting clear on how things feel for you. Is it a 3, is it a 6, is it a 9, what have you. That's a really great step with getting to know yourself. And then once you know yourself, then you can start to really be yourself. And that's what people say when they're talking about living an authentic life. And you can't live an authentic life until you really know who you are. But you can't really know who you are until you're thinking clearly, right? And you can't really start thinking clearly until you get your empty buckets filled. So I hope that makes sense. So okay, so Martine asks, okay, 8 or higher. Yeah, so like I had mentioned earlier before you got on, when I came across this quote in my desk that said something like, go after, people or experiences that register as a 9 or higher on a 0 to 10 scale of like fulfillment. And if it's an 8 or less, then it might as well be a 0. And when I first read that quote, I was thinking, like, wow, that sounds really intense. Like, I don't even know how many things I have in my life that would be a 9 or a 10, because I was so used to settling for crumbs. And so my friend and I at work today, we were talking all about this. It was such a, like, I'm so curious for you guys to go do this, because I think it's going to be like really, really eye-opening. Here are some of my realizations. I had gotten used to buying really cheap coffee. I'd done that for years and years and years. Really cheap bread, like the cheapest bread you could buy at the grocery store. That stuff tastes terrible. It tastes terrible. Just cheap food all the way around. And, let's see, like, I mean, just ridiculous. Clothes that didn't fit right. Like, I mean, just running around, like, just not taking care of myself is what it was. Just not treating myself with value. Just like settling. Use it. And it's not that it's not that it has to do with like spending a lot of money. It's just kind of like finding what is a 9 or a 10 for you and then making that happen. So like certain things, like I love coffee. I love a good cup of coffee. Like, to me, that's worth spending the money on a good cup of coffee. It's, I might not care so much about, like I said earlier, I'm not into brand names at all. I'm not into shopping at all. So, it's like and that's the beauty of it. And this comes to like knowing yourself, because you're going to have different things about you, that you're going to be like, wow, I think I've been maybe settling for crumbs in this area, or I've been really not in tune with who I am in this area. And so maybe, I mean, you live in Europe, so I don't even know if they sell cheap bread or gross bread or gross coffee over there. I kind of don't think that they do. I think that's like an American thing. But, just Okay, so Martine asks, but if I rate people, what about me? What am I? Am I a 5 or an 8? Well, it's you. Well, okay, so here's the thing. So okay, first of all, it's you. So it'd be really great if you could get to the place where you love yourself enough that you think that you're a 10, right? Because this is the body that we have while we're here on this planet, and it's really great if you can, like love the skin you're in, kind of a thing. This isn't to say that you think that you're perfect, or that there's no room for growth, because there always is, but you can still love yourself during that process. Let me I came across a great quote the other day that I put on Instagram. Let me see if I can find it. So yeah, I just figured out Instagram. So you guys, if you want to, I don't know, what do you do? Follow or friend or whatever is on Instagram. The name there is Narcissist Support too. Okay, so here's this quote. And I absolutely loved it, and it says, "And I said to my body softly, I want to be your friend. It took a long breath and replied, I have been waiting my whole life for this." And I think so many of us, we just go through just not feeling good enough. And, you are. Okay, yes. And 123 says, I think it's sad that people expect you to love yourself just because you're considered attractive. Yeah, and one has nothing to do with the other. And so, okay, good night, Caitlin. Yes, Merry Christmas to you too. Thanks for hopping on. And if you're going to be around next Wednesday, we will too. So, yes. Okay, so Cecilia mentions day by day, even if it's as simple as I'm okay, you can build from there. And so, yes, you bring up a really great point. So you can start focusing on things that you like about yourself. Um, you know, Maybe you really like your toes. Maybe you really like your eyelashes. Maybe you really like your wrists. Maybe you really like, maybe you really like your tush. Maybe you really like kind of, your waist or whatever. And just focusing, when you look at your body in the mirror, focusing on what you do like. And just, and I think too, there's a lot of healing that just says, like, I just thank you. Like, you want to be on the same team, like, as your body, right? Because this is the whole. Have you ever heard the saying, "We are a spiritual being having a human experience"? I think that there's kind of a lot of truth to that, and so this is just kind of our skin suit. Like, this is, this ages. This does not last. It really doesn't. And for us to place really a ton of importance on things that don't last, that really sets us up to for suffering, right? And so it's so much more important to focus on, yes, Martine, exactly. Martin, like saying, I like my soul. Is that good enough? My dear, that's what it's all about, right? It's liking your soul, it's liking your character, it's having that confidence and knowing, like, yes, I am a good person, and like, this is what I like about me, and really embracing that and focusing on that, because that's, so a lot of us, we're gravitating towards these narcissists and these sociopaths that love bomb us, right? So we're gravitating towards them because they're like, oh, finally, I'm going to get this bucket filled of like love and attention and affection. But really, we need to fill that bucket ourselves. And that's how filling those buckets happens, is telling ourselves, like, this is what you're doing right. This is what I like about you. And no matter what it is, maybe it's, you are a really good dog mom, right? Or a really good mom, or a really good sister or brother, or, kind of what have you, and really seeing your qualities for what they are. Okay, so Martine says, okay, so how come I have an inferiority complex because other people don't care for my soul. They have other things they find important. Well, it's because these other people that don't care about your soul are not your people, right? So if you were to ask yourself on that scale of 0 to 10 of like fulfillment and enjoyment, where are those relationships? And we don't have to make it about the people. We don't have to make them, bad. It's just they're just not your tribe, right? Like this is all about finding your people. And so if if those relationships or those friendships are only at, I don't know, you tell me, right? Like a 4 or a 6, then it's not going to be fulfilling for you or for them. It's just not a fit, and it's okay to drive on. It's okay to just be like, this is not working for me, and then to not just not stick around, because it's that whole idea of, well, I better keep this person as a friend because if I don't, then I'm not going to have any friends. Right? That's a great way to tell that you need to start filling that bucket. Because here, like, having the wrong people filling your buckets, that's this false sense of abundance, and that does not end well. So, let's see, Candy Girl. Baba asks, how can I find you on Instagram? My name is Narcissist Support. Like, yes, the name on Instagram is Narcissist Support. I laugh because it's like the one place that I actually have my website name, and I couldn't remember it. What? Oh my gosh. So 123 says, people tell me I'm a waste of a pretty face. How do I prove them wrong? That is terrible. Okay, I think first off, realizing that their opinions, especially negative opinions like that really goes to show you that these are not your people, because your people are going to nourish you. They're going to empower you. They're going to inspire you. They're going to support you. They're going to build you up. If you have people tearing you down in your life, then they're the wrong people for you. That's what it is. So Martine says, okay, so no outside filling of the buckets. That's right. Fill your own first, because then, like, once you get them all full, other people, now it's like, it's just icing. Now it's all just the good stuff. It's just the good stuff. And you're just so enjoying it, and you're not clinging to it. You can enjoy it for what it is. You can appreciate it in the moment. And, if they come out in and out of your life, because that happens, right? People, people move, people, relationships end, these kinds of things happen. If they drift in and out of your life, you can appreciate your time together for what it was. And then if and when they move on, it's not this like world ending thing, because now you're all alone again. So, it's such a win-win if you can just give all of this to yourself, because then you can really appreciate them for who they are instead of resenting them for who they're not. So, okay, back to the whole, how do you prove these people wrong with, you know, they're telling you that you're just a pretty face and all this. People like that are really, because that's just so unnecessarily hateful, like so unnecessarily hateful. I would just steer totally clear of them, and just kind of find, again, this kind of goes back to like the best revenge is a good life. And, living a good life really starts with knowing who you are and like, what is a good life to you? So really getting crystal clear on what that looks like. And then not telling people like that, because they're going to be really waiting for you to fail. Just figure out like what really juices you, what really jazzes you, and then start pouring your energy into that. And kind of like it's just a win-win situation, right? Because at the end of the day, you will have built yourself a great life. Like it's just kind of the added, gravy that that they get to see you being happy. So, you know, um let's see. Okay, bite your own teeth says, please tell more about the buckets. How many main types of buckets do we have? What are the most important ones? Nice concept. So the three main buckets are really, if you're familiar at all, and I need to get like a thing made up on like Fiverr or something that is a like a drawing of what I'm talking about here. But the three main buckets that I'm talking about are like the three, I think it's the three, like the three bottom levels of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so you have that bottom level, which is the physiological needs. So it's like your basic needs of safety and security. So, food, clothing, shelter, air, water, money could probably go in this one. The other bucket would be the one of significance. So love, affection, importance, attention kind of go in that bucket. And then there's the bucket of stability, which is just that bucket is just the assurance that the other two buckets will continue to get filled on a regular basis. And so if those buckets, again, if those buckets are running low, that's when cognitive dissonance really kicks in. And so what cognitive dissonance is it's distress that we feel when our thoughts and our actions don't line up. And so if we're being driven towards an action, if we're running, if we have a bucket that's, empty on, let's say, importance or affection, right? And we come across a highly manipulative person that's making us feel very important and they're being very affectionate, we're getting that bucket filled, and we want to continue getting it filled because it feels so good. And so in order to continue that action of staying in that relationship or that friendship, we need our thoughts to line up with that. Well, if the thought becomes, oh, I think this person isn't everything that they seem, and if our other thought is that we want to respect ourselves, we have to pick a thought that matches the action that we're going to take. And so this is why all of us justify or deny or minimize or blame or in any other way not see the truth for what it is. And so it's because of cognitive dissonance that we're not seeing red flags. And so it's really, really important to get rid of that cognitive dissonance. We all experience it every day. It's not just, it's probably more prominent with problematic people and like abusive relationships, but we all experience it. So like, for example, New Year's is coming around. People are going to be making New Year's resolutions, and they're going to, and this happens to all of us, right? So we're like, yeah, I'm going to, get to the gym and I'm going to just radically change my life. And then people stick with that for like a week or maybe 3 weeks, and then there comes the temptation. Like maybe they're at a birthday party and then there's cake or something. And so in order for their thought and action to line up, if their original thought was, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, but now their action is going to be, I really want to eat this piece of cake, they need that thought to line up with that action. So they might tell themselves, well, I'm going to work out twice as hard tomorrow, or well, that cake had sugar-free icing, or that cake was a small piece of cake, or well, that cake had fruit on it, so like that kind of counts, or well, I'm just going to skip dinner. Do you see how this works? And so that's on like just a food level, but it's the same with relationships. So it's this whole idea of like, well, maybe that person was texting, his girlfriend, or maybe I have a hard time like switching genders in my head. Maybe this guy was on his phone in the bathroom texting at 3 a.m. because his mom is sick, Or maybe, the reason he always goes in the other, maybe the reason he deletes all of his browsing history is because like he really does feel like it kind of clogs up his computer. Or, you know, I bet that other girl that told me that, that she'd slept with him, I bet she's just jealous of what we have. Or I bet she really wants him back. And of course, it doesn't help when we're with manipulative people because they really feed into this. And then that's why a lot of us tend to accept any excuse that they throw our way. And so they might, and they know, they don't, half the time they don't even really try. Like it's just kind of this, half-assed, like, oh, you're paranoid, or oh, you have issues with trust or whatever. And then we're quick to believe them because the truth is it's too painful for us to see the truth for what it really is. We can't accept that problematic behavior as truth because we need to have those buckets filled. So I hope that explains that a little bit more. Okay, so Andromeda says, one of the things I am doing now is to learn to confront people as soon as I feel a sense of doubt and clear the air faster. So, yes. However, I just want you to know that, so, okay, so there, and I'm just throwing this out there, but um, there's a couple different parts to having healthy boundaries. And so one of them is and you're doing it, the first step is to like assert that boundary, right? Is to say like, I'm really not like okay with being talked to like that. Or I think that's kind of, I don't know how I feel about that you spend, Christmas with your ex-wife. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you're speaking up for yourself and you're like, this kind of makes me uncomfortable. And then if it continues if it happens again, or if depending on how they handle like you bringing something up, then and everybody kind of has their own line for this, but the other part of having healthy boundaries is also having deal breaker behavior. And so a lot of times, a lot of us tend to stay in a relationship and feel like as long as we're bringing up that they're violating our boundaries, that's the same thing as having healthy boundaries, and it's not. It's only half of it. And so then the other half is if they continue to disrespect you in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't have to be that exact same boundary, but it could be any other boundary, right? That our buckets are full enough that we can just leave and just say, you know what? And again, this doesn't have to be us making them bad. It doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be you justifying anything. So a lot of us tend to do that. We tend to think like, well, if we can just get them to understand how their behavior is hurting us, then they'll stop. And that's problematic. That's one of the red flags, right? So like if you're having to explain the basics of adult behavior to another adult, that's a problem. So either they don't know what an adult acts like, which is like, you know, you need to ask yourself, like, do you really want to spend, how long is that going to take to catch them up to speed with what an adult behaves like? Or are you being manipulated? So it's either one of the two. So, seeing, oh, what was I saying with that? So like, having not not feeling that we need to somehow continue to explain ourselves or to get them to understand our issues, and that we don't need to to justify or explain or to somehow feel like we have to earn their respect or their love or their good behavior. So okay, let's see. Andromeda says, I told the Starbucks barista that the pervert is sexually harassing me by staring at me under black sunglasses and always looking at me and sitting close to me in many numerous times. Um, okay. So I realized that me attracting perverts is allowing perverts to get their way with me was because when I was a child, I was molested and I disassociated and pretended to be safe in unsafe environments. Wow. Yeah, that is really powerful. Um, Wow, it sounds like you really have had a tremendous amount of realizations and insights. And um, I only realized yesterday that my ex brother was a pervert all my life, and I had trauma bonding with him. He said nothing and pretended nothing happened. And so what you're describing is very, very common. And so here's what's really interesting too about abusive people, whether they are, sexually abusive or emotionally or physically or financially or what have you. They, in their mind, and this is kind of like their own form of cognitive dissonance, they can't deal with what they're doing. And so they either project it onto other people, especially onto the victim, which is very crazy making and confusing, right? Or they, in their mind, they are the exact opposite, and which is very confusing for victims. So they will say things like, well, I am a very calm and laid back kind of guy. But the victim's like, no, you're not. Like, you're super high strung, and like, you're like the exact opposite of that guy. Or they'll say, they'll just flat out deny it. Like the whole, well, I never yelled at you, or that never happened, or, you're being too sensitive, you're making too big of a deal out of things, these kinds of things. It's, it's, they're not owning up to their behavior. And so, it's hard because a lot of victims, understandably so, they want to, get that validation from the person that's hurting them. And it's like, you just, and I get it because I was there. It's like, you just want that validation of like, this is what you're doing. Like, quit making it seem like I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. Like, you're really doing this. It's just, it's so maddening. So, I, I think that it's awesome that you're working through so much of your stuff, and um, I'm excited for you in this next chapter of your life, because it's one of those things. Like, we all do this. Like, we all go through life, you know with these certain actions that we're taking, and these certain thoughts and these feelings that we're having, and it's kind of this like pre-programmed behavior, and it's these messages that we normally get when we're a kid, and these messages were, and they could be real or perceived. So like, we kids perceive, they just interpret things in ways that might not have been meant for them to interpret them that way. So it's really hard, I think, as an adult, to kind of sort through and like figure out like, where did I get all these different messages from. But it's really, really worth it. But the first step is, kind of, it's in that awareness of it. And so now that you're aware of, oh, okay, like, this is where I was getting this from, and this is what's going on with this. Like, once you bring that awareness to it, then you can really start to untangle and start realizing, like, when you're operating off of this kind of like outdated mindset that you don't have to carry anymore because you're an adult. So, yes, Peace Pom Pom says, Andromeda, thank you so much for sharing. The idea of pretending to be safe in unsafe environments is an absolute light bulb moment for me. Yes, yes, it is. And so, and this goes back to, a lot of people experience cognitive dissonance. And so, and I mentioned this in one video about fear. So a person might feel fearful, but because they don't want to leave their relationship, that they will deny that feeling, and they will gloss over it, and they'll brush it off. And so those feelings, that whatever it is, it's really important that we pay attention to them, because odds are it's information that our brain has that we're suppressing, and that information is much more realistic. It's much more accurate as far as like what's going on than our thoughts about that information. So, okay, guys. Yes. Let's. Oh my gosh, it's been 2.5 hours. So let's call it a night. So, yes, Bite Your Own Teeth says, keep the buckets full, but be aware of cognitive dissonance. I feel like I've settled so long and put others' needs above my own. I am not aware of my own. I'm looking forward to your bucket list. Yes. So, yeah, I look forward to it. I would really, really, really encourage you guys to spend like the next 24 hours just getting in touch with where things kind of rank on that like fulfillment scale for you or that enjoyment scale. And there doesn't have to be, like I said, there doesn't have to be any judgment about it. It's just kind of that observation and that awareness of like, what do I really enjoy? And where would I rank this? And just it's really, really, really interesting. And in asking yourself too, have I been settling for crumbs in different ways? And so how? Have you been buying really cheap bread and cheap coffee and cheap toilet paper and, uncomfortable shoes and, all of this stuff? So what have you been doing? What areas have you been, really like just kind of buying stuff that you don't really want to buy? So yes, Elvis fan. This live stream is every week. It's every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So okay, I'm going to take one last question because I don't want to leave this person hanging, and then I will sign off here. So all that Kaz says, is he a narcissist or not? There's lots of red flags. So, okay, again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's with the labels, it's the labels are great for kind of that validation, but I would encourage you to just focus on problematic behavior. Because if you've got a person that has problematic behavior in your life, it doesn't matter if they have a personality disorder, if they're a full out narcissist or a sociopath, or if they're just like a difficult person, right? It any like that's a spectrum of problematic behavior, and any of that is worth like getting out of your life because it's not worth it. So again, this kind of goes back to finding out what are those, aim for, again, like, 8 or higher, 8 to 10 on your scale of enjoyment. Gravitate, spend time with those people because those are your people. Those are your people. Spend time with friends and with relationships that you feel nourished, that you're excited to see this person, that you really enjoy your conversations, that you really enjoy your time together, that things really just kind of click. Like those are the people that you want to be around. So, you know, I hope that helps. Let's see. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. Crystal asks, my husband and I have had a huge fallout. Now comments are scrolling up too fast. Now under the tree are gifts from him for the kids and myself, but last year he wrapped old toys and the kids were bothered. Wait, I'm missing something here. My husband and I have had a huge falling out. Now under the tree are gifts from him for the kids and myself, but last year he wrapped old toys and the kids were bothered. Should I allow him to do this? Like allow him to, I guess if the kids have already seen the presents under the tree, I would just leave it. I would try to keep the kids out of it as absolutely as much as possible. And I don't blame them for being bothered. That's, I don't know what the circumstances were that he wrapped up old toys and put them under the tree. If that was like a financial thing, or if it was kind of him being selfish or him thinking he was being funny or things like that. But, assuming that, you guys had some money for Christmas presents and that was his way of trying to be funny or snarky or a jerk, then I could see how that would be really hurtful for kids. So, I would validate your kids and let them know, like, yeah, I don't know why your dad did that. That wasn't funny. It was kind of hurtful because I'm sure it got their hopes up. Okay, yeah, no, he thought it was a joke last year, and I don't trust him. Yeah, a lot of narcissists tell jokes like this, and and it's not a joke. There's nothing funny about it. Like nobody's laughing, right? So it's invalidating. It's making your kids feel less than. It's not cool. So if you don't trust him, that's so hard. I guess if the kids have already seen the toys, then maybe, unless you think he's gonna try to do something to hurt them with the toys, like take all the toys at the last minute and then blame you, or something like that. I don't know. If you think it's going to kind of go like that, then you might want to try to stay ahead of it. And I don't know if he's still under the same roof or kind of what the dynamic is, but you know, I guess if it was me, and I'm just gonna have to kind of make some assumptions here, I would probably kind of err on that side of caution, right? Okay. I get it now. So last year he wrapped up old toys, put them under the tree. This year I'm afraid it will be the same. Well, is he still in the house? Because what you could do is, while he's not in the house, like if he's at work or he leaves for some reason, to open up a few of those presents and see if they're, just peel off the tape and see if they're the toys. And if if he's not under the same roof, if you yeah, for now, but you're looking for a divorce really soon, you might, if you have the money, and it doesn't take a lot, but if you have the money to go, just go to the store and go buy the kids some presents, and keep them somewhere hidden. And then after you kind of figure out like what's going on, then you can kind of try to do some damage control with that. And I would acknowledge, again, like bring that up. And I don't know if you're afraid of him, or if you think that would really escalate the situation, but I would definitely let the kids know, either in front of him or in private, that what dad did is not okay. It's really hurtful. It's understandable that they would have their feelings hurt. This doesn't mean that they're greedy, or that they're not grateful, right? That's not funny. That's not it's not funny. And that here's some toys, or whatever. And just try to anticipate as best as you can to not let him spoil Christmas, because that is such a narcissist thing to do, is to spoil the holidays. So this time of the year, it's real common, expect for everybody to like kind of expect hoovering, to expect, these phone calls or text messages out of the blue, to expect, these future faking, and this idea of this perfect family, and or the exact opposite, which is to like ruin holidays, because it's not about them. So really terrible gifts, hurtful gifts, a lack of caring about others. So that's that. Okay, guys. All that Kaz says, thank you, Dana. You're so knowledgeable, and I sincerely hope that you are working in a career that helps people in this regard. Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad. Do to some capacity, it's a little bit different, but I would absolutely love to do more kind of outreach and education and all of this. So we'll see. We'll see where this leads. So because I thoroughly enjoy it. So I'm glad that this gives a lot of kind of my pain and what I've gone through professionally a purpose. So okay, guys, take care. Have a fantastic Christmas. If you're not in the group, if you want to join a support group, I have a couple of them. You can go to my website, narcissistsupport.com, and then look under the tab that says support group, or you can go the group on Facebook. If you look it up, it is called, what is it called? It is called, the thing is facebook.com/forums. Yes, no, /groups/healing after narcissistic abuse. If you look it up, I think it's called narcissist support from YouTube is the name. So, yes. So I'll be in the groups, of course, as always. So, okay, guys, take care. Have a fantastic night and lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. You really, really can. So take care. Be good to yourself, and pay attention to those 9 out of 10 and higher experiences, and really get in touch with what you enjoy. So, Cecilia, yes, messages. You're gonna love it. Like, the support group is all about messages, and it's there's over 1,000 people there now. So it's 24/7 is support. It's awesome. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. We'll see you soon. Okay, bye.